So, instead of calling them superheroes, here they're exceps. Exceptional? Or are they exceptions from some kind of cosmic rule? My name is James Craig, and I'm a science fiction author. Cape comments aren't exactly my forte, but I'm going to break down some analysis on ISOM 1, the first installment of the Rippaverse, skewed as it may turn out to be. I'm a sci-fi guy. I'm going to take all the contents we have so far and do a bit of extrapolation. Avery may well be the main character of the comic, but the two more revealing characters, in my opinion, are actually these two. Green Superman and Bothor. According to the secret intel cards, Brian Solari got the Captain America treatment during the Great War of Separation, which tells us quite a few things. First, exceps can be made. Second, despite Fluorospark looking completely ordinary, it just got out of a major conflict that needed exceps to be solved. At the same time, Valadin's card indicates that the world is filled with so-called gods who have been living in hiding for centuries, if not millennia. So, exceps are not new, and yet we made it to the same modern world. Now, why is that? Before I answer that, I'm going to start by pointing out Rippaverse is a kitchen sink modern day superhero world, and that's for pretty obvious marketing reasons. Mr. July is trying to give the consumers what they aren't otherwise getting. Rippaverse isn't a limited system like Kamen Rider or X-Men or you name it, and it's certainly not a subversion setup like Watchmen. There are gods, experiments, aliens, mutants, natural breakthroughs, and super buff ranchers. But that doesn't mean there won't be a unifying theme to the exceps. You can have all the expected tropes and setups and still have it feel cohesive. So how to resolve the conflict? Magical gods have been on Earth all this time, but the course of history only recently changed. We know they were in hiding, so from what? The only piece of the puzzle so far is the Great War of Separation. Who was that with, though? Not an Earth nation. It would have been called World War III if it was an Earth nation. Not some empowered revolutionary, magical conqueror, anything like that also wouldn't have been called a war of separation. For Earth to have fought a war of separation, it must have been part of something and broken off. Now, some people have suggested that this is actually referring to a second American Civil War. I think we would have seen more definitive evidence of something like that. I'm pretty sure that this is in regards to the actual exceps, the gods, and everything that was alluded to at the very end of the book. Now, Valadin, despite seeming to be a protector of Earth, probably isn't from Earth like Yaira. I don't know where Asgaror is, but he calls Earth a realm. Pretty sure he's an alien. Oh, and for the context of this video, I'm not making a distinction between planetary travel and interdimensional travel. There's really not much difference as far as storytelling goes. Anyway, at the end of the book, Norfolka senses someone returning to Earth and considers that they need to call in the cavalry. The other gods in hiding, presumably. I think that's pretty conclusive evidence that Earth was a subordinate realm of some interplanetary governance, and only just recently do they have the power to free themselves. Doesn't mean that the interplanetary governance has been destroyed. You gotta have an evil god somewhere for a comic series, don't you? Now, this isn't exactly a theory, but rather a prediction. I believe very soon we'll be introduced to a sort of Ozymandias, a Hank Pym, a Brainiac, someone who's an except, but their power is their intelligence, and he will have been the one that created the Superman program that created Solari. And for the sake of setting integrity and coherence, high intelligence will turn out to be one of the rarest acceptabilities. The knock-on effects of even minor improvements to technology that a superhuman intellect could make would simply unravel a modern setting. There are real-world incentives to keep Rippaverse a reflection of reality, so I highly doubt you're going to see any commercially available arc reactors like in the MCU. But the emergence of a rare high intelligence character also answers the question of, well, why does the story take place now? What is special about the setting that makes this the moment that has the best stories in it? It's all well and good to say, well, we want it in the modern day, therefore tell the stories in the modern day. But to make an actually good product, you need to have an answer for This is why I'm giving people what they want, and a rare emergence of a high intelligence person that can shift the paradigm, such as from the gods have to be in hiding to we can now make accepts. We can defend ourselves. We do not need to bow down to some evil god. We can fight a great war of separation. That answers the big question of why now? Now, let me try to tie this all together. I think accept means exceptions, specifically exceptions to a cosmic rule put on humanity to limit them, to say this is what a human is, this is what they're capable of, and no more. Accepts are therefore people who broke through the constraints of the circumstances of their birth and have flourished because of it. In fact, I think Mr. July is taking a page out of One Punch Man's book. Avery says it himself. He's just trained. You see him at the ranch doing regular strength training, and he overcame what a normal human is limited to. Now, Documon thinks he might be one of the strongest beings on the planet. And naturally, who else than the main character is going to fight off evil aliens? I think the Rippaverse will be going down a philosophical line of mind over body, and you'll see that in how multiple powers manifest in people. Super strength, flight, and who knows what else Solari can do aren't going to have some single underlying function. This isn't going to be JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, people. Solari is simply capable of doing what he can understand, what he can grok. Think about it like the Matrix. Lots of people can move fast, shoot well, dodge bullets, and jump across buildings. But at the end of the first movie, only Neo can fly. Not because he's the one, but because he understands what he's doing. You might think I'm grasping at straws here, but it will actually explain a lot of tropes you're likely to see going forward. Namely, that every accept is super tough, recovers from wounds quickly, barely ages, and yet doctors don't know somebody's an accept even when they're in the ICU. There are a ton of contrivances that enable superhero stories. Things like the Flash also having super speed reflexes and vision to match his running speed. Once a person has transcended their limits, they're only going to be limited by what they can understand. Everyone will naturally develop a certain resilience to harm and aging, but how many people will understand what it means to be more intelligent? Not many. Same reason Solari and Braxwell can fly, but Valdez can't. If you don't believe me yet, consider the practical application. Doing this kind of mind over matter setup unifies all causes of accepts, gives a path for the characters learning new powers when needed, but also pushes them to expanding uses of what they already understand. They can even have mid-combat breakthroughs. But are we going to see ISOM put his fist through a god's face? The amount of people who know that for certain, you can probably count on one hand. This has just been my fan theory. I'm James Craig, a sci-fi kind of guy, and if you're still here, please subscribe for future content. If you think I'm full of shit, you think I'm totally wrong, let me know in the comments. See ya.